Hello, beloveds. This is Donny, and today I had something I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm especially addressing my my brothers and sisters who are also poly and hyperglots who have a great passion for learning languages. But this message is not just for them, for those brothers and sisters, it's also for all of you. Because what I want to talk to you about today is activation. How our purpose can come to us through an activation. And to that, I want to tell you about how I was activated in my language learning. Because as I like to tell the story now, I will tell you this in the next couple of minutes, is I received what I call a letter from God. This was a divine activation that I received when I was 17 that did change the course of my life. And up to that time, I had been studying Spanish kind of half-heartedly in high school, and I was taking all the classes, and I didn't really speak it very well, but I was able to read some and everything, but it wasn't like a big interest. And then one morning when I was 17, something very strange happened, quite unbidden, quite unthought of. I hadn't been thinking about languages learning or anything. And what happened was a complete body experience, and that's how I experienced this activation. So it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just found myself awoken up in bed, and sitting up in bed, and couldn't remember even getting up. So I normally would get up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, so this is very unusual for me to be up that early, quite awake, quite aware, and not even sleepy. I had no desire to lay back down. And so this was rather a strange phenomenon. So I got up, and all of a sudden I felt this immense hunger, an immense hunger that emanated not just centered in my stomach where you normally feel hunger, but through my whole body. It was like a radiation throughout my shoulders and arms and legs down into my feet. That's hunger that started here, and this part of my body went throughout my whole body, and it was an intense hunger, and a hunger like I'd never experienced before. And I thought, well, isn't that something to wake up with this kind of hunger? And so I went out in the kitchens, and my parents, of course, were still asleep, so I started to find something for breakfast. I opened up the refrigerator, looked at the eggs, looked at the bread, the stuff I usually would eat, and it just wasn't appealing to me. I looked at the sausages, it wasn't appealing to me, and yet this hunger was growing by the second, an immense hunger, an immense, something was just opening up in my body. And I just thought, well, this is really awfully strange, and what am I going to eat to satisfy this hunger? And the more I looked in the refrigerator and the cupboards, the more I realized that I didn't want any of that food. It wasn't food that would satisfy the hunger. That was my first realization that morning. And so I thought, well, what could this mean? I had no idea, and I had any experience like this before at the age of 17 of this kind of activation. So I stood there for a while, and the sun was just coming up by that time, and I stood at the kitchen window, and that's where actually the sun did come through my childhood home, and the sun came through and it shone upon my face, and all of a sudden I realized that I had to learn languages. As I said, up to that point I hadn't had such a big interest in it. I just studied Spanish, as I mentioned, but all of a sudden I must study languages. It wasn't even an intellectual decision that wouldn't that be fun, wouldn't that be, it was not any such thing. It was a powerful need, hunger in my body. So as 40, 50 years later, I look back on that and I see that as my letter from God and my energetic, spiritual, if you will, activation. So what did I do that day? Well, it was like I had to make some quick decisions. It was like I couldn't wait. I couldn't just think about this for the next 6 months. I had to do something that day. So I thought, well, I've been studying Spanish. I think if I learn French, it'll be something similar, and I can teach myself, because I couldn't enroll in a class at that time. It was the middle semester. So I got in the train, went down to the university as I did every morning to go to class, and before I even went to class, I went into the bookstore. Remember, this is 1977, so there were no internets or any kind of thing. So I just went into the first bookstore I could find that was open, went to the language section, and got the Berlitz Self-Teacher for French. If any of you ever looked at those books, those are very old self-teaching books. I think the first of the modern self-teaching books. It didn't have any kind of recording, just had a pronunciation in it. And I remember coming home that evening and having on my blackboard, I had a blackboard at home, writing down "Qu'est-ce que c'est?" c'est la boîte, c'est la plume, writing these little sentences down and beginning to teach myself French. And in the way I like to describe this thing is as if you're sitting in an ocean. You know, you're up to your chest in the ocean, and a wave comes along. It's not like you can say, well, I don't think I'll do it today, I don't think I have time. The wave is going to push you whether you want to or not. So that's what it was like for me, whether I wanted to or not. I was compelled by this immense hunger, whatever word you want to put on it. It was a physical feeling of deep hunger to learn French. And I studied it on my own for 2 years, and went to Quebec and took the summer course, and I actually became fluent in French, got a job with Air France. Well, that story could go on, but then more languages would come. I started the day I came home from Quebec after studying French all that summer. I already had set up my stuff to learn Portuguese. I got the records. Remember, this is way back in '79. I got the LPs of the living language, and I started studying Portuguese. And then came German, Russian, Italian. And the message I think is very important is that the way I chose the languages I was going to learn over these past 25 years was by connection. I had a connection somehow with the language, some heart connection, because that's how I work with it. I just can't pick a language even today and say, well, I think I'll just learn this language. There has to be a connection. So for example, my desire to learn Danish today, which I'm studying, stems back to my working at the Bank of America in the 80s, where Mrs. Peterson was Danish, and she would teach me Danish. You know, in between, we were working. It's not like she gave me lessons, but she would play with me and give me words. And then I went to Denmark, and I met people, and I'm a musician as well, so I played music there with people, and have this. Even as I tell you this story, I feel this deep heart connection with these Danish people, and my love of Denmark, of the land, of the people, of the energy there. So that's the basis on which I build my Danish. And of course now those people are gone, but there are of course new people that I'm contacting through Skype that speak Danish and that are welcoming me into their language. So the other question is, as I learned all these languages, and you, my brothers and sisters who are polyglots, the question for me came up: why? So I have this, and you, I know, have this big passion to learn languages, and you learn, and you all speak 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever languages, and we do this. And the question is, what is our service in the world? So those of us that speak languages in 10 and 12 languages, it's obviously, I would think, has something to do with communication. That was hard for me to figure out. So I would suggest that all of us that do these languages and that are passionate about them, I would suggest that we are perhaps bridge people, that we bridge the gaps between cultures and languages. And maybe that is something that is at the core of our service. But as I learn these languages and speak them and love them and have so much fun talking on Skype with all my language friends, the question always is what is the message we're giving, what is the service in the world, and how can this help not only myself, but the people around me. So that's my story about my activation in languages, and a thought for you. And for those of you who are not quite into languages, you have another passion in your life. You have something else that you may be hiding, or that you may not want to, you haven't quite brought out of the closet. I'm a gay man, so I know all about coming out of the closet, but still, that's a great archetypal image for all of us. All of us, no matter what our sexual orientation is, have something in the closet that we're bringing out. Some secret desire, some secret wish that you have and have had all your life, that you wouldn't dare tell anyone, that you only even barely tell yourself in your dreams or in your most private moments. That is where the juice is. That is where the heart is. That's where your greatest service is to yourself and to your brothers and sisters.